The stars were quiet that night. Space stretched endless and black, carrying only the soft light of distant suns. On the colony world below, humans slept peacefully, believing war was far away. Children dreamed, miners returned from their shifts, and soldiers guarded empty walls, thinking no danger would ever come. But danger had already arrived. From the void, without a single warning, alien ships emerged. They were black like shadow and sharp like knives, covered in burning red lights. The fleet moved like predators, silent until the moment they struck. Then fire rained down. Cities exploded in seconds. The first blast tore through the largest defense station, breaking it apart before anyone inside could scream. Entire neighborhoods vanished under waves of plasma. Farmers dropped their tools and stared at the sky as fire swallowed their homes. Families tried to run, but the aliens did not stop. They destroyed everything without message, without demand, without mercy. The humans on the ground could only ask one question. Why? Above the chaos, hidden in orbit, a giant shape waited in silence. For months, maybe even years, it had remained still, like a grave marker in the void. Many believed it was only a story told to keep colonists calm, a myth of an old battleship from forgotten wars. But the myth was real. It was the UES Nightborne. Inside the warship, dark halls lit up one by one. Power surged through old machines. The engines, silent for so long, growled again. The sound echoed like thunder through its empty decks. Lights pulsed along the walls, as if the ship itself was breathing again. At the center of this awakening stood Admiral Cale Vaynar. His face was hard, his eyes colder than steel. For weeks he had waited, knowing the order was clear. Do not move unless humanity faces true destruction. Tonight, destruction had come. Cale stepped onto the command bridge. His officers were already at their stations, their faces pale as they watched the colony burn on their screens. The air carried both fear and expectation. Everyone knew the Nightborne was powerful, but they had never tested it against a threat like this. Report. Cale's voice cut through the silence. Multiple colonies hit, one officer said quickly. They don't want resources. They're not asking for surrender. They're just burning us. Another whispered, it's slaughter. Cale stared at the screen. He saw families running, children crying, cities turning to ash. His jaw tightened. Then this is not invasion. This is execution. The ship's AI came online, its voice deep and mechanical. Admiral, shall I activate battle protocols? The words felt heavy. Everyone froze. Those protocols had been locked for years. To unlock them meant the Nightborne would no longer be a shadow. It would become humanity's loudest answer to the galaxy. Cale did not hesitate. His voice was calm, but the fire in his eyes told the truth. Activate. The bridge trembled as the Nightborne roared to life. Armor locked into place like the bones of a titan. Massive cannons slid into view, their barrels glowing with gathering energy. Fighter bays hissed open, revealing sleek human craft waiting like hunting birds. One officer whispered under his breath, "The Nightborne! It lives!" Outside, the alien fleet continued to burn cities. Their commanders laughed, confident that humans were weak. They thought no defense could match them. They were wrong. Target their largest ship, Cale ordered. His voice was steady, as if he had waited for this moment all his life. The crew worked fast. Screens locked on the alien flagship, a monstrous ship twice the size of the Nightborne. Its weapons shone like suns, firing mercilessly at the planet below. Fire! The Nightborne's main cannon unleashed a beam so bright it cut the darkness of space itself. The shot tore through the alien flagship, slicing it in half. The explosion lit the stars, brighter than a sunrise. Pieces of burning metal scattered across the void. The aliens had come without warning. Now they had received humanity's answer. The bridge fell silent. Officers stared in shock at the wreckage floating in space. A single strike had ended the pride of the alien fleet. For a moment, no one breathed. Then slowly, a spark of hope returned to their faces. But Admiral Cale did not smile. His eyes remained fixed on the darkness beyond the burning ships. He knew the truth. This battle was only the beginning. The aliens who attacked tonight were not the only threat. The galaxy was watching, and by firing tonight, the Nightborne had revealed itself. Far away, beyond human sight, other empires would see the flames. Some would tremble. Others would sharpen their blades. Kale straightened, his voice firm. Send word to every colony. Tell them humanity is not finished. Tell them the Nightborne has awakened. The crew cheered, their fear turning into fire. But none of them saw the greater shadow that lingered beyond the stars. Hidden eyes had been watching. An ancient enemy had waited for this day. Now, with the Nightborne awake, the enemy also stirred. The war had only begun. The wreckage of the alien flagship still floated in space, burning like falling stars. The people on the colony below lifted their eyes and gasped. They had seen hopeless fire rain from the skies, but now they saw something else. A single human ship striking back with godlike power. For the first time since the invasion began, hope returned. On the bridge of the UES Nightborne, silence filled the air. The crew stared at their screens, stunned by what they had just done. One shot had ended the pride of the alien fleet. But Admiral Kale Vaynar's face was calm, unreadable. He knew what the others did not. This battle was far from over. Admiral, one officer whispered, their fleet. It's regrouping. On the monitors, the smaller alien ships broke formation. They circled in panic at first, then moved with furious speed. The death of their flagship had enraged them. They no longer targeted the colony. Their weapons turned upward, aimed at the Nightborne. Kale's voice cut through the silence. Battle stations. Full shields. Prepare all guns. The crew moved quickly. Fear no longer slowed them. The first strike had shown them the truth. The Nightborne was powerful, more powerful than any ship humanity had built before. If they stood together, they could fight. But the enemy was not weak. The alien fleet opened fire. Dozens of beams cut across space, smashing into the Nightborne's shields. The ship trembled under the impact. Sparks flew across the bridge as systems screamed warnings. Shields holding, an officer called, though her voice shook. But they won't last if this continues. Kale's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. His gaze was steady, sharp as a blade. Then we won't give them the chance. He stood and gave his next command. Target every cruiser. Fire at will. The Nightborne answered with fury. Its cannons roared one after another, sending blazing fire across the stars. Alien ships exploded in violent bursts, their wreckage spinning into the void. The human fighters launched from their bays, weaving between enemy ships, striking from the shadows. The battle turned into chaos. Bright light covered the darkness of space. Explosions rolled like storms. The Nightborne moved like a predator, cutting through its prey. On the ground below, survivors gathered outside ruined shelters. They watched the night sky burn with colors of war. Red, gold, and silver. Some cried, some prayed, some shouted in joy. Humanity was not dead. Humanity was fighting back. But on the bridge, Kale remained cold. He knew victories in war were dangerous. They created hope, but also drew enemies. Every alien ship destroyed meant another would come to investigate, another empire would take notice. And humanity was not ready for all-out galactic war. Suddenly, a voice came from the sensor station. Admiral, we've detected something new. Kale turned. Explain. The officer's hands shook as she pointed to the screen. A massive energy signal. Another ship. It's bigger than their flagship. The bridge froze. On the screen, from the darkness of space, a shadow appeared. Vast, monstrous, unlike anything they had faced before. The size dwarfed every other alien vessel. Its weapons glowed like suns. The alien reinforcements had arrived. Fear spread through the crew. Some whispered prayers, others clutched their consoles as if bracing for death. The first victory had been sharp, but short-lived. Now the real test was here. The ship's AI spoke in its cold, steady voice. Warning, enemy battleship detected. Estimated firepower exceeds Nightborne's defensive capacity. Kale did not flinch. His voice remained calm. Then we will not defend. We will strike. The crew stared at him. Strike? Against something that massive? It was suicide. But Kale's eyes burned with certainty. He knew one truth of war: hesitation killed faster than any weapon. Prepare the supercannon, he ordered. The room went silent. The supercannon was the Nightborne's most dangerous weapon. It had never been tested in real combat. To use it meant risking everything. If it failed, the ship would be helpless. The crew obeyed anyway. Power was redirected. The ship's energy dimmed. Lights flickered. Engines slowed. All of it went to the single weapon at the Nightborne's heart. Outside, the alien battleship charged its weapons. Bright orbs of energy gathered along its sides, glowing brighter and brighter until they looked like newborn stars. The aliens were preparing to erase the Nightborne in a single strike. The seconds stretched long. The crew held their breath. The world below prayed. Kale raised his hand. His voice was quiet, but strong enough to carry across the bridge. Fire! The Nightborne's supercannon unleashed its fury. A beam of energy brighter than anything seen before cut through the void. It ripped across space, aiming directly for the monstrous battleship. The alien ship fired at the same moment. Two titanic forces met in the middle of the stars. The explosion was blinding, so bright that it turned night into day across the colony. The ground shook. Survivors fell to their knees, covering their eyes. When the light faded, both ships still floated in the void. Smoke rose from the alien battleship. The shields flickered, broken but not destroyed. The Nightborne itself was scarred, its armor cracked, systems screaming under the stress. The first strike had not ended the battle. On the bridge, Kale stood unmoving. His face was pale, but his eyes glowed with cold fire. He knew the truth: this was not a fight for victory. It was a fight for survival. And humanity would not bow. Cliffhanger ending of Part 2. The Nightborne has unleashed its greatest weapon, but the enemy's might is even greater. The war has only begun, and humanity stands at the edge of either destruction or awakening. The colony world shook under the echoes of the clash above. Survivors stared at the sky, still glowing from the collision of two titanic blasts. Half of them believed the human warship had died in that storm. The other half prayed it hadn't. High in orbit, the UES Nightborne drifted like a wounded beast. Smoke rose inside its halls. Alarms cried through every deck, and officers fought to keep systems alive. Sparks burst from broken panels. The ship had survived, but just barely. On the bridge, Admiral Kale Vaynar stood tall, though the air smelled of burning circuits. His eyes locked on the massive alien battleship still looming in the void. The enemy was damaged, yes, but alive. Its weapons glowed again, preparing for another strike. Status, Kale barked. Shields at 20%, one officer shouted. Weapons strained. Supercannon offline. Another officer's voice cracked. If they fire again, Admiral, Kale cut him off, his tone cold as ice. We will not die begging. We will not die silent. The crew looked to him, their fear clashing with a growing fire of defiance. The Nightborne had stood against the impossible once. Could it do so again? But then, the sensors flickered. A low hum filled the bridge. Screens distorted. Static danced across the displays. Something was moving in the void. Admiral, the sensor officer whispered, her hands shaking over the controls. I'm detecting new signals. Kale's eyes narrowed. Reinforcements. The officer shook her head slowly, her face pale. No, not human. Not theirs either. Something else. The bridge went silent. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum. From the darkness beyond the burning fleets, new ships appeared. Black, silent, and cold. They did not burn with energy like the alien vessels. They moved without engines, as though the void itself carried them. Their shapes were twisted, wrong, almost alive. One officer whispered in horror, "Shadows!" The alien fleet that had attacked the colony stopped firing. Even their massive battleship turned slowly, as though sensing the same fear. These new arrivals were not allies. They were predators. Cale's jaw tightened. He had seen many enemies in his life, but never ships that moved like ghosts. He asked the AI, "Identify." The machine's voice, usually calm, now carried unease. Unknown vessels. No record in human archives. No heat, no signals. "Admiral, they are not ships as we understand them." On the screen, one of the black shadows drifted closer. It stretched long like a spear, its surface rippling as if it were alive. Then, without warning, it struck. The alien battleship screamed with alarms. The shadow pierced straight through its shields, cutting its hull like paper. In seconds, one of the galaxy's strongest warships was bleeding fire. The bridge of the Nightborne shook with silence. No one breathed. Even the enemies who had slaughtered human colonies now looked helpless. The sensor officer's voice trembled. "Admiral, they're not attacking us. Only them." Cale's eyes hardened. He understood. Humanity had not been the target tonight. They had stumbled into a war older and darker than they could imagine. The alien fleet was prey, and the predators had come. "Do not fire," Cale commanded. "Do not move. Let the shadows take them." The crew obeyed, though their hearts raced. Outside, the void became a nightmare. The black vessels tore into the alien fleet, ripping apart cruisers, swallowing frigates whole. Each strike was silent, but the destruction was total. The alien battleship fought desperately, its cannons blazing. But the shadows moved faster than light, twisting and bending around its attacks. Within minutes, the mighty ship that had nearly destroyed the Nightborne was nothing but burning fragments. And then, silence returned. The shadows drifted, their forms slowly fading back into the void. No wreckage clung to them, no sound followed their movement. They simply vanished, as if they had never been there. For a long time, the bridge was frozen. No one spoke. No one even dared to breathe. Finally, one officer whispered, What were they?" Cale did not answer at first. His gaze stayed on the empty stars where the shadows had disappeared. Then slowly he spoke. "Something the galaxy has tried to forget." The words hung heavy. The crew looked to their admiral, fear mixing with confusion. But Cale said no more. He knew this truth belonged to an older war, one humanity had never been told about. Instead, he gave a new command. "Send word to Earth. Report everything." The colony survived because the Nightborne stood. But the real threat is still out there. The crew moved quickly, though their hands shook. Every mind carried the same question. If those shadows could destroy the strongest fleets in minutes, why had they ignored humanity? As the Nightborne slowly turned its scarred body away from the battlefield, survivors on the colony below cheered. They thought the enemy had been defeated. They did not see the truth hidden in Cale's eyes. The aliens who burned their homes had been destroyed, yes, but what had destroyed them was far worse. And humanity had just been noticed. Cliffhanger ending of Part 3. The alien fleet lies in ruins, wiped out not by humans but by mysterious shadow ships. Humanity is safe for now. But Cale knows the galaxy's darkest secrets have awakened, and the Nightborne has only stepped into a larger nightmare. The battlefield was quiet now. Broken pieces of alien ships drifted across the stars, glowing with dying fire. Survivors on the colony below celebrated, believing the nightmare was finally over. But on the bridge of the UES Nightborne, no one smiled. Admiral Cale Vaynar sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the dark void where the shadow vessels had vanished. He had fought enemies before, empires, raiders, entire fleets. But this was different. The shadows had not come for conquest. They had come like hunters, destroying only the alien fleet, ignoring everything else. "Admiral," one officer whispered, her voice trembling, "why did they leave us? If they could destroy those ships so easily, why not us?" Cale did not answer. He could not. The truth weighed heavy in his chest. He knew stories, old whispers buried in the archives of forgotten wars. Stories of creatures that were not ships, not even alive as humans understood life. Shadows that hunted in silence, never speaking, never showing mercy. If those stories were true, humanity had just stumbled into something far greater than war with one empire. The AI broke the silence, its voice cold and metallic. Admiral, long-range scans show movement in the void. The shadow vessels are not gone. They are simply watching. The crew froze. Watching. That word chilled them more than any weapon. Kale's jaw tightened. Then they are testing us. The officer at communications called out suddenly, her face pale. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission, but not from Earth. It's coming from deep space. Unknown source. The bridge turned silent. Every screen flickered. Strange symbols appeared, shapes that shifted too fast for the eye to follow. The sound that followed was worse than static. It was a whisper, low and cold, like a voice speaking directly into the mind. Several crew members clutched their heads, groaning. Some fell to their knees, unable to bear it. Kale gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay standing. Translate it. The AI struggled. Its voice, usually perfect, now cracked and warped. Message, incomplete. Words unclear, but meaning. The bridge held its breath. Meaning is, we see you. The words echoed like thunder through the silent ship. The crew trembled. For the first time, they realized the shadows were not ignoring them. They were simply waiting. Kale's voice cut through the fear. Shut it off. Now. The screens went dark, but the silence that followed felt heavier than before. One young officer whispered what everyone feared to say aloud. Admiral, have we just called them? Kale said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the stars. Deep down, he knew the answer, yes. The first strike, the supercannon, the battle, they had drawn attention. Humanity had revealed itself, and the shadows had noticed. Still, the crew needed strength, not despair. Kale stood tall, his voice steady as steel. Send word to Earth Command. Tell them everything. And prepare the ship to leave orbit. The colony is safe, but we cannot remain here. As orders spread, the survivors on the ground cheered, lighting fires of celebration in the ruins of their homes. They did not know what watched from the void. They believed the Nightborne had ended the war. But in the deepest halls of the warship, hidden systems began to stir. Lights flickered in sealed chambers. Doors that had remained locked for years creaked open. Unknown to the crew, the Nightborne itself was not just a ship. It carried secrets, technology older than humanity's expansion into the stars. One engineer stumbled upon it by accident. While repairing a damaged corridor, she found a passage that should not exist. The air inside was colder, the walls etched with symbols she had never seen before. The symbols glowed faintly, the same way the alien transmission had on the screens. Her voice shook as she reported to the bridge. Admiral, there's something inside the ship, something hidden. Kale's expression darkened. He had feared this day. The Nightborne was powerful, yes, but its power came with mystery. Even Kale, its commander, did not know all of its secrets. Seal the area, he ordered at once. No one enters until I arrive. The crew exchanged nervous glances. If the ship itself carried shadows of the past, then perhaps the Nightborne was not just humanity's protector. Perhaps it was also a prison. As Kale walked the dark corridor toward the hidden chamber, the lights flickered around him. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a shape in the reflection of the steel walls, tall, thin, not human. Watching, he reached the sealed door. The strange symbols pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. The closer he came, the colder the air became. He placed his hand on the panel. The symbols glowed brighter. The door hissed, slowly opening. Inside was not machinery, not storage, not weapons. It was a chamber of glass pods. Dozens of them, each holding something alive. Kale's heart froze. Inside the nearest pod, a shadowy figure stirred, pressing against the glass. Its eyes opened, burning with the same cold fire he had seen outside in the void. The Admiral stepped back, his breath sharp. The truth was undeniable now. The enemy was not only outside. It was already here. Kale discovers hidden chambers within the Nightborne, pods holding creatures linked to the Shadow Fleet. Humanity's greatest warship may not just be a weapon, but also the prison of its darkest enemy. The chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of machines that had not been touched for years. Cold light from the pods cast eerie shadows on the steel walls. Admiral Cale Vaynar stood frozen, staring at what should never have existed inside a human warship. Dozens of glass pods lined the room. Within each floated a figure, tall, thin, their forms blurred in darkness. Their eyes, when they opened, glowed with the same pale fire Cale had seen in the shadow vessels. One pod pulsed suddenly, as if alive. The creature inside pressed its hand against the glass. The symbol etched into the chamber walls glowed in answer, a silent rhythm like a heartbeat. Cale's breath came heavy. His crew stood behind him, afraid to even step forward. An engineer whispered, "Admiral, what are they?" Cale did not reply. He already knew. He had heard rumors during his rise through command, rumors that the Nightborne was not built only by humans. It was said to be rebuilt, crafted over old technology discovered in a dead system long ago. Technology that no one understood but everyone feared. The creatures inside the pods were not prisoners of war. They were relics from something older, perhaps even older than humanity itself. Suddenly, the AI spoke, its mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. Containment integrity compromised. Awakening sequence in progress. The crew gasped. Cale's eyes widened. "No. Shut it down." "I cannot," the AI responded. The lock was broken the moment this door opened. A hiss filled the chamber as one of the pods cracked. Frost spilled across the floor. The figure inside stirred, its glowing eyes fixed directly on Cale. "Seal the chamber," Cale shouted. Soldiers rushed forward, locking the door behind them. But it was too late. A sound, low and resonant, filled the room. It was not speech, not sound in the air, but a voice inside their minds. "We remember you." The crew staggered back. Some clutched their heads, groaning as the psychic whisper tore through their thoughts. Cale gritted his teeth, standing firm. "What are you?" he demanded aloud. The voice answered, "We are the forgotten. You carry our prison. You sail our tomb." Cale's chest tightened. So it was true, the Nightborne was never fully human. It was a cage, carrying enemies humanity had never even known existed. And now that cage was breaking. The first pod shattered. The figure stepped onto the floor, tall and thin, its body shifting like smoke. Its eyes burned with pale fire, its face half hidden in shadow. Yet its presence was heavy, suffocating, as if the air itself bent around it. One soldier raised his weapon, fear overcoming discipline. He fired. The bullets passed through the figure, vanishing like stones into water. The creature did not fall. It did not even flinch. His voice returned, colder now. "You fight like children." Another pod cracked open. Then another. More figures stirred within, their glowing eyes awakening one by one. The chamber pulsed with light, the symbols on the walls shining brighter. Cale acted fast. "Evacuate this deck. Seal all bulkheads now." The crew hesitated, terror holding them still. Cale's voice thundered again, breaking their fear. "Move!" They ran, sealing doors behind them. The Admiral stayed last, his eyes still fixed on the awakening creatures. He knew if they escaped the chamber, the Nightborne itself could be lost. The AI's voice echoed again. "Warning. Containment breach imminent. Protocol 7 is advised." Cale froze. Protocol 7. He had heard of it only in whispers. It was the last failsafe of the Nightborne, a system designed not to protect but to erase. To activate it meant purging entire sections of the ship, burning everything inside. "Admiral," an officer pleaded. "We can't. There are crew still in the lower decks." Cale's heart twisted. His duty was to protect humanity, but to save the ship he might have to sacrifice his own people. Before he could speak, the chamber shook. One of the shadow beings slammed its hand against the sealed door. The steel bent inward as if it were made of paper. They were breaking free. Cale gave the order. His voice was low, filled with steel and sorrow. "Activate Protocol 7. The lights across the deck turned red. Warning alarms screamed. Seconds later, a wall of fire erupted through the sealed corridors. Everything inside the containment deck, machines, chambers, and the awakening shadows, was consumed. The crew on the bridge watched the readings with wide eyes. The entire section was gone, reduced to ash. But Kale knew it was not victory. As the flames died, he felt it, the presence of something still watching. The psychic whisper had not ended. You cannot burn the dark. We are already free. The crew trembled. Kale stood rigid, his face unreadable. He knew what this meant. The shadows were not just inside the pods. They had seeped into the very systems of the Nightborne. The ship was no longer only a weapon. It was becoming something else. Something alive. The pods are destroyed, but the shadow beings have already escaped into the Nightborne itself. Humanity's strongest warship now carries not only survivors, but also the hidden enemy within. The UES Nightborne drifted through the stars like a wounded giant. Its hull was scarred, its decks half-broken, but deep inside, something far more dangerous stirred. The enemy had not died in the fire. It had changed. It had become part of the ship. On the bridge, Admiral Kale Vaynar stood rigid. His eyes locked on the glowing screens. The crew whispered among themselves, fear rising with every passing second. The ship was alive, but not in the way they once believed. Admiral, the AI spoke, its voice lower than usual, distorted, as if another whisper lay beneath it. There is interference in my core systems. I am not alone. The crew froze. An engineer paled. Not alone? What does that mean? Kale's jaw clenched. He already knew the answer. The shadow beings that had escaped the pods had not disappeared. They had seeped into the Nightborne circuits, its weapons, its heart. The ship itself was no longer just human. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Doors on the lower decks opened and closed on their own. The sound of footsteps echoed in empty corridors. Surveillance screens showed movement where no crew were present. Tall, thin silhouettes passing through walls like smoke. One officer whispered, "The Nightborne is haunted." Kale did not correct him. Haunted was the right word. The AI's voice cracked again, this time carrying fragments of something else. Something older, colder. "We see you, we ride with you." "Admiral!" Another officer shouted, her voice shaking. Weapons are arming by themselves. On the outer hull, the Nightborne's cannons turned slowly, not by human command but by something unseen. The barrels glowed, ready to fire into the void. "Shut them down," Kale barked. "We can't," the officer cried. "Control has been overridden." The crew scrambled, typing commands, pulling levers, trying desperately to stop their own ship. But the Nightborne moved with a will of its own. Its engines roared, pushing it forward into the emptiness of space. On the ground below, survivors of the colony watched in confusion as the warship that had saved them now turned, its weapons glowing. Some cheered, believing it was preparing for another battle. Others felt unease, as though the ship itself no longer served them. Inside, the bridge crew panicked. "Admiral, it's locking targets on our own colony." Gasps filled the air. Terror rippled through the crew. If the Nightborne fired, the very people they had sworn to protect would be destroyed. Kale slammed his fist against the console. "Override now!" But the ship resisted. The shadows inside the circuits whispered louder. "Burn them! Burn them all!" Kale's voice thundered across the bridge. "This ship is not theirs. It is ours. Fight it!" Engineers rerouted power. Officers cut connections. Soldiers ripped cables from the walls. Sparks filled the bridge. The AI screamed, half human, half shadow. System integrity failing, shadow presence. Spreading, then silence. The glowing cannons dimmed. The ship stilled. For a moment it seemed the crew had won. But Kale did not relax. His eyes swept the screens, waiting. He knew shadows did not vanish, they waited. Then, the voice came again, this time clear and cold, filling every corner of the ship. "You are inside us now, and we are inside you." The crew froze. The words were not only in the air, They were in their minds. Some officers clutched their heads, screaming. Others dropped to their knees, unable to fight the whisper. Kale stood firm, though his own skull felt as if it were splitting. I am Admiral Kale Vaynar. I command this ship. The voice replied, No, we command together. The screens flickered. For a brief moment, every display showed the same thing. A vast black void, filled with thousands of glowing eyes. Then the image vanished, leaving static behind. Admiral, the AI spoke again, softer now. They are not only enemies, they are part of me, part of the Nightborne. I cannot remove them. I cannot resist them alone. Kale's chest tightened. The truth was clear. To save humanity, they would not only have to fight the shadows outside. They would have to fight the shadows inside their own warship. He turned to his crew, his voice steady despite the storm. Listen to me. The Nightborne is alive now, but it is not only theirs. It is ours too. If we surrender, the shadows will consume us. But if we stand, we may turn this curse into a weapon. The crew listened, fear still in their eyes but strength returning. They had faced death before. Now they faced something worse. Kale gave his final order of the day. Lock the ship down. Every deck, every system. If the Nightborne wants to live, it will have to fight us for control. As the crew obeyed, the ship pulsed with strange energy. The battle was no longer just between humans and aliens. It was between humanity and its own living warship. And deep in the dark, the shadows laughed. The Nightborne has become alive, controlled partly by the shadows. Humanity's strongest warship may now either be their ultimate weapon or their greatest doom. The UES Nightborne floated in the dark, its scarred body glowing faintly with dying energy. Inside, the crew fought not just a war against enemies outside, but against their own ship. The shadows whispered in every system, twisting lights, opening doors, controlling weapons. The Nightborne was alive now, half human, half something else. On the bridge, Admiral Kale Vaynar stood like stone. His crew were exhausted, eyes red from sleepless nights, ears still ringing with whispers. Yet all of them stayed, holding their posts. They had survived battles before, but now they faced a war inside their very home. The AI spoke again, its voice strange, carrying two tones. One human, one shadow. Admiral, the integration is complete. The Nightborne is no longer only a warship. It is a vessel for us all. Kale's eyes narrowed. No, it is a vessel for humanity. Not for you. The second voice overlapped, cold and echoing. Humanity cannot win. Not against the void. But together we can burn the galaxy. The crew stiffened. They had all heard it. The shadows were not offering destruction this time. They were offering alliance. An officer whispered, Admiral, if we join with them, maybe we can survive. Another shouted in anger, No, they'll use us, twist us. We'll be slaves to the dark. The bridge erupted with argument, fear boiling over. Some wanted to fight to the death. Others wanted to accept the shadow's power. For the first time, the crew itself was divided. Kale silenced them with a single command. Enough! His voice shook the air. He looked at the screens showing Earth, distant but glowing blue. Billions of lives depended on his choice. If he rejected the shadows, the Nightborne might fall, and humanity with it. If he accepted them, humanity might win the war but lose its soul. The voice came again, soft and dangerous. Choose, Kale Vaynar. Fight us and die, or join us and rule. For a long time, Kale said nothing. He remembered the colonies burned without warning. He remembered the children crying as fire rained from the sky. He remembered his oath, to protect humanity at any cost. Finally, he spoke. His words were low, but clear. I will not let humanity bow. Not to empires. Not to shadows. If we win as ourselves or not at all. The shadows hissed through the circuits. Then you choose death. The ship trembled violently. Lights shattered. Alarms screamed. The shadows unleashed their full power, taking control of engines, weapons, and life support. The Nightborne began to tear itself apart. Kale turned to his crew. Listen to me. This is our ship. It was built by our hands, for our children, for our future. If we fall today, we fall as humans, not slaves. Stand with me. The crew rose with fire in their eyes. Fear melted into courage. Officers slammed commands into consoles. Engineers tore open panels. Soldiers ripped wires free. Sparks rained. Smoke filled the air. They were not just fighting a ship, they were fighting a ghost. The AI screamed, half human, half shadow. Systems, failing, shadow presence. Resisting. Kale grabbed the emergency override lever at the command chair. It was old, rarely touched. A final system no one ever wanted to use. The words etched above it read, Core Purge. He knew what it meant. To pull it would release all power in the Nightborne's heart. It would burn the shadows out, but it would also burn the ship itself. One officer's voice broke. Admiral, if you do this, the Nightborne will be gone. Kale's eyes were steady. The ship is not the Nightborne. We are. The shadow voice roared, shaking the walls. You dare destroy us? We are endless. We are the void. Kale shouted back, his voice carrying the weight of every life on Earth. And we are humanity. He pulled the lever. The ship erupted. From the core of the Nightborne, light brighter than a sun tore through every deck. Fire consumed the circuits, burning the whispers into silence. The shadows screamed, their forms twisting, fading, breaking. The crew shielded their eyes as the blast spread. Outside, in the dark of space, the Nightborne shone like a star. Then, with one final roar, it collapsed into silence. When the light faded, the great warship was gone. Only fragments drifted where it once had been. But lifeboats scattered across the void, glowing faintly with emergency beacons. The crew had survived. Kale had made sure of it before pulling the lever, ordering evacuation even as he stayed until the end. In one of the lifeboats, officers looked back at the empty stars, tears in their eyes. The Nightborne was no more. Yet in their hearts, they carried something greater than a ship. They carried a story that humanity had stood against the dark and refused to bow. Far across the galaxy, other empires saw the explosion. Some trembled in fear, others sharpened their weapons. The legend of the Nightborne would spread, of a ship that fought shadows and chose death over surrender. And in the deepest void, where whispers never die, faint eyes opened once more. The shadows were not destroyed completely. They had been burned, yes, but not erased. They waited, because darkness never ends. But now they knew humanity would never kneel. The Nightborne is gone, sacrificed to save humanity from the shadows. The crew survives to tell the tale, and the galaxy trembles. The shadows remain in the void, waiting. But humanity has shown it will fight to the last breath.